Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan. I'm the mind behind Make More Capital, and today we're coming at you with This Week in Cannabis news from November 8th to the 14th. So before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learned something, please just leave a like on it as it really helps out my channel. Then, of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos, and there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the industry, identify top companies that you keep seeing pop up, and take advantage whenever you're ready. We're going to start with this update from Jungle Java, who is a great source on Twitter, provides daily updates to the changes that are made in the Advisor Shares MSOS ETF. So she tweeted on Friday, closing out a massive week, MSO gang, with another big day of cash and basket inflows for the Advisor Shares MSOS ETF. Here are the changes made to the holdings for November 12th. So if this is something that you're interested, you can check. So I would recommend following her just so that she provides this, but also worth noting, dry powder 127.3 million as compared to 103.9 million the day before. And then on Friday, dry powder of 150.6 million as compared to 127.3 million yesterday. And so this was the first week in a very long time that we've had 5 consistent days of over 100 million of dry powder of cash showing up overnight. So that just is the signal that we've been waiting for a long time, that the volume is coming back because people want their money invested in MSOS. And then from my understanding, they give their cash. MSOS uses that cash to buy shares, and we all end up winning because MSO is investing in the MSOs that we are invested in individually. So just wanted to share this, as this is a great indicator that the trend is starting to change as well, which is exactly what we want, because more volume equals more eyes on the industry. As large investors are likely paying attention to this industry, they're just waiting for some sort of an indicator or signal like increased volume that will make it worth their while to start opening up a position as well. Now, ideally though, the best thing for us would be mainstream media coverage, as most people still watch the television. However, it's worth noting that we are getting coverage in some other outlets that aren't the mainstream media. So I just wanted to share this, as Wall Street Bets is starting to pay attention to US cannabis as opposed to just the LPs. MSOS US Cannabis ETF just passed $1 billion in assets. Now this was posted, then there was more information just basically highlighting the intricacies of like how the US cannabis is on the OTC market versus Canadian LPs, and the fact safe might pass in the NDA. So I don't know why that got deleted. It just wasn't here when I decided to pull this up this morning, but a lot of comments seem as if people in the Wall Street Bets group are pretty keen on this opportunity as well, and so they're obviously seeing the increased volume and it's making them pay attention. While on top of this, just wanted to share a big Bitcoiner, Anthony Popliano, who's got 1.2 million followers. Now, obviously, he's not pumping MSOS or anything, but Todd Harrison obviously was quick to tweet, and other MSO gang members were, but he's just highlighting new legislation will reportedly be proposed Monday to legalize cannabis at the federal level, along with apply a 3.75 tax on sales. We should immediately legalize cannabis and release every person in prison for nonviolent cannabis crimes. Yes, pump. Thank you for speaking my language, because enough is enough. It's a plan. So although he's not pumping MSOS, he is bringing awareness to the whole legalization cause, which I thank you for that, pump. So just wanted to share all that. Well, it's time to end the aura of illegality for drugs, top federal health official says. We're going to learn more about this. The government bears some responsibility, yeah, I think so, in perpetuating stigmas against drug addiction that have created barriers to treatment, the head of the nation's top drug research agency says. In an op-ed published by the Association of American Medical Colleges last week, National Institute on Drug Abuse Director Nora Volkow shared a personal story about the stigmatization of drug use and the negative consequences that's had for people suffering from substance misuse disorders. Or I'd like to just use addiction. I'm not a big fan of this fluffy language trying to disguise reality, but part of that stigma comes from the enforcement of punitive drug policies, including some that remain in effect, she said. While government policies, including criminal justice measures, often reflect and contribute to stigma, she said. When we penalize people who use drugs because of an addiction, we suggest that their use is a character flaw rather than the medical condition. And sadly, just a lot of the times it seems as opioids or solutions that we have now are just a band-aid, but they don't actually solve the root of the problem. So ideally, we'd be able to see more effective treatment if we try to solve the root of the problem, right? I think. And we incarcerate addicted individuals, we decrease their access to treatment and exacerbate the personal and societal consequences of their substance abuse. So we need large-scale social intervention to change public attitudes toward addiction and people who have the disease, she wrote in the new op-ed. Besides ensuring proper training and the resources needed to help patients with substance abuse disorders, we need to seriously reconsider policies, not only laws, but regulations and practices in healthcare and other settings that promote viewing substances use as wrongdoing. Well, sounds like you're on to something, Nora. Please take this idea a little further and make something happen. Well, this is surprising news, as Biden's FDA prescribed cannabinoid medicine and recognized cannabis's therapeutic potential. So this is a surprise and worth just highlighting, as President Joe Biden announced on Friday that he intends to nominate a new Food and Drug Administration commissioner who has acknowledged the potential medical benefits of cannabis and says he actually prescribed a cannabinoid drug as a doctor. Robert Califf, who previously served a short stint as the FDA head under the Obama administration, hasn't been especially vocal about cannabis issues, but at a 2016 federally hosted research summit on cannabis, he recognized various therapeutic applications for the plant and its components and emphasized that the agency is interested in promoting research and development. So this is very positive, and hopefully he's not going to change his views now that he's taken this position. We understand that people have identified a number of possible uses of cannabis and cannabis-derived products. For example, AIDS, wasting, epilepsy, neuropathic pain, treatment of spasticity associated with multiple sclerosis, cancer, chemotherapy-induced nausea, Califf said, and I had the chance to prescribe some of this in my cardiology practice in people with extreme heart failure who get a wasting Cachectic syndrome. I don't know how to pronounce that, unfortunately, so my bad there. But notably, he has said that while the FDA has yet to find that botanical cannabis is safe and effective for any indication, well, because they haven't descheduled it yet to start the research, that's not to say that there aren't any good uses for it. Well, clearly there are, and the evidence is mounting, and additional studies could shed light on the situation. Yeah, if we would just deschedule the dem plant. But regardless, I wanted to share this because this is comes as a surprise that Biden nominates someone that is cannabis positive. So again, we just hope that his views don't change. Well, I just wanted to highlight this from Cannabis Newswire that Republican-sponsored bill could be ideal federal cannabis policy reform law. So if you want to learn more about the bill, you can read through and grab the link below here. But just going to read the snippet. As led by Rep. Nancy Mace, the legislation titled the States Reform Act may be the compromise between the more modest cannabis reform that Republicans have proposed and the comprehensive cannabis reform Democrats would like to pass. The measure is currently being circulated among industry stakeholders to get feedback, with the final version being officially filed later this month, which is funny because this was published on the 12th, being filed later this month. Later this month actually means on Monday, 3 days later. So I just thought that was funny, but I wanted to share this from MJ Stock Trader on Cannabis, MSOS, and Reddit, so thank you for sharing this. But this is the information for her press release to host press conference on introduction of the States Reform Act. And so the what is Congresswoman Nancy Mace on Monday the 15th, 2021, hosting a press conference to introduce the States Reform Act, who Rep. Nancy Mace, along with stakeholders, veterans, and members of law enforcement, especially veterans though notable, those who benefit the most from this plant being descheduled, when at 2 p.m., 2:45 p.m. Monday, November 15th, 2021, or tomorrow, where at the U.S. Capitol outside of the House Triangle. So just wanted to add, MJ Stock Trader is going to look at live broadcasting it on his Twitter page, so if you want, you can follow him there to tune in. I'm going to be tuning in as well, but basically I want to say to the Dems, if you want to learn how to actually file something and not just introduce a draft legislation, watch how the Republicans get this done, because this is going to make things really explosive on Monday. So on to some sales. Out of new cannabis ventures, record adult use purchases lead Michigan cannabis sales 59% higher in October to 163.5 million. So just wanted to share this news as of November 12th. With an additional day compared to September, Michigan cannabis sales advanced 1.3% sequentially to 163.5 million, up 58% from a year ago. So the Michigan Cannabis Regulatory Agency breaks out sales by medical and adult use, with medical sales falling 18.8% from a year ago to 35.2 million, down 4% sequentially, and adult use increasing 115 to 128.4 million, up 3% sequentially, with the new record there. And so you can see the breakdown, how much of what different product types people are buying here if you wanted to pause and read. But I think the most important thing, just wanted to go down to highlight that Michigan generated $985 million in cannabis sales in 2020, and the program should continue to expand ahead as supply becomes more available and as distribution expands. So far in 2021, year-to-date combined sales are up 86% to $1.47 billion already. So talk about how big of a difference that legalization of adult use makes. That's quickly accelerating the growth. So we love to see that as sales continue to grow and set records in Michigan. While I did want to share this one's from November 1st, so it's a little bit later, but American cannabis sales weakened further in September according to BDSA. So figured we'd go through this and just compare with past years to see what we can anticipate in the future. With Western markets, BDSA provides coverage for Arizona, California, Colorado, Nevada, and Oregon. In August, growth ranged from 12% in Nevada to 28% in Arizona compared to a year ago. So in Arizona, it transitioned to adult use in late January, but this was the 6th month that BDSA has included adult use sales. Total cannabis sales grew 28% to 18.6 million, with adult use representing, that's got to be 118. Yeah, that's a typo. With adult use representing 52.7 million, while medical cannabis sales fell 34% from a year ago to 55.9 million. So at first glance, you'd look and be like, wait, why are sales going down? But keep in mind, it's worth noting that, since legalizing for adult use, all sales have surpassed over 100 million, since the start of that. So not necessarily any reason to be worried that a new market like Arizona, that sales are going to keep going down. And it's also just worth noting that if we take a look at past trends, typically the most money is spent in the summer, and then we will see spikes heading into the holiday seasons, into the spring of the new year, and as we head back into summer. So it's totally notable for this time of the year, especially September, to see weakened sales just based on looking at the past. Now, some more mature markets, California, sales fell 11.4% to 293.1 million, down 7.7% from August, and quite a bit from their all-time high, which was May 2021 of over 350 million. But again, if we have to take a look at their history, sales typically start to go down after summer, and they'll lull a bit before peaking, either a holiday season or a month in the spring before rolling up into summer again. And as California is a market that's trying to get more, illegal growers into the legal market, we can definitely see this pick up, I think, in the futures, which is why I'm not concerned, and I'd rather see the up and down than just straight up, because that's just not sustainable over time. Well, if we jump down to Colorado, the annual decline improved from 13.4% in August to 8.5% in September, as sales fell 0.3% sequentially to 190.4 million. But if we do take a look again, see what happened in 2019. After a big summer, we saw a lull, then explosive sales. Now, this was likely helped from stimulus checks, but it's very likely we might end up seeing a similar thing heading into next year. And this is the most mature market in the country, so just keep that in mind. Nevada sales fell 11.6% to 73.08 million, down 8.4% from August. But this chart is so reflective of Nevada being a tourist destination, because we can see similar trends last year where sales started to slow down as people head into the holiday season, but then come past peak winter, we see sales pick up as people probably want to travel more. And main thing is that it's very hot in Nevada during Nevada's summer, so we might see less people going there just for the sake of going there, and that's where we might see more sales pick up in the early parts of the year when people want to go there to escape winter. So that's just something I noticed, but similar trends in the past of up and down. It's a very spotty market compared to some of the others, while Oregon sales in this mature market dropped 5.2% compared to a year ago and 4.8% from August to 94.6 million. So ideally, we'd love to see sales maintain above 100 million in Oregon, but there's no reason to think that they're not going to get back up there, because if we look at similar trends after summer, they head down a little bit. Trends typically pick up for Oregon into the new year, so we might have to wait a little bit, but that's what we've seen looking at history. Let's jump down to the eastern markets and take a look. Note that BDSA has begun providing data for Florida, Michigan, and Pennsylvania as of January. So Florida sales increased 5.8% sequentially to 159.4 million, while Pennsylvania fell 3% from August to 102.1 million. Now note that these are both just medical-only markets, and I know that in Florida, incoming governors are saying they're going to legalize if they're elected, and lawmakers in Pennsylvania are working on introducing a legalization bill for adult use, so those markets could open up in the near future, while Michigan we did just cover. So we'll jump down to Illinois. Combined adult use and medical sales fell 2.5% in September, including accessories, to 156.1 million, but still up 43.9% compared to a year ago because of that significant jump that we see when cannabis is legalized for adult use. Now, Maryland, probably the most sad case because they've been medical only for a while. However, the governor is going to put legalization on the 2022 ballot, so we can anticipate Maryland being a state that legalizes in 2023. Their annual growth for medical only improvement had slowed from 10% to 6.7% year over year, as sales fell nearly 4% from August at 42.9 million. So this is what happens when you keep medical only and you don't expand medical quickly enough. That's where we're seeing this market have probably the worst effects out of all of them. Then we jump down to Massachusetts. And the 40% growth year over year in September was down from the 55% year over year in August, as sales contracted 6% sequentially to 141.3 million. But I don't think there's any reason to think sales are going to slow down in Massachusetts, as they legalize for adult use as well. So main thing we want to look out for is our mature markets able to pick back up at some point, and every year they've proven that they can. So we're going to be watching mature markets, we're going to be watching the newer markets as they continue to anticipate growth. But as we head into the holidays, spending typically picks up, so we might be able to see a bit of a rebound from this. Well, we are getting some love from some mainstream media outlets, so just wanted to highlight them. If you did want to watch these videos, you can grab the links below. I'm not going to play them all because they're a little bit too long, but this one from CNBC and Tim Seymour, who's the active portfolio manager for CNBS, highlights cannabis stocks take off on legalization hopes. One investor sees potential for more upside, and he basically highlights what's happened in the past week and what we can anticipate going forward because of that, especially if SAFE stays in the NDAA. So you can watch that and pull the link up below here. Well, this is a 9-minute interview from Zach Guzman from Yahoo Finance and then Ben Kovler, CEO of Green Thumb Industries, but the main takeaway, just to highlight highlight here. You can grab the link below if you want to watch the interview. Ben is a great speaker. It's worth tuning into. But weed legal states seeing more cannabis tax dollars than alcohol tax dollars, Green Thumb CEO says, which is the main takeaway as Americans are voting for cannabis with their dollars. And then lastly, this one from the chart guys, as the bulls really prove it and cannabis stocks are gaining momentum. As someone that's trying to improve my technical game, this is a good video to watch through, especially because he's anticipating an explosive start on Monday. But then keep in mind that during the middle of the week, we will see some healthy consolidation as setting higher lows and lower highs. I'm not exactly sure. I'm just trying to be a little bit funny here. But then we can anticipate after a bit of consolidation from an explosive Monday, we see a strong finish to the week, much like we saw last week. So ideally, we want to see more of the same thing that we saw last week. And so if you want to learn a bit more and try to step up your technical game, you can learn a lot from watching these videos, as the chart guys are really awesome. So just wanted to share this here if you wanted to tune into that. So out of individual states, Office of Medical Cannabis Use out of Florida, these is for the week of November 8th to the 12th. So we saw 2 stores open, Sunnyside in North Miami, so that would be Cresco Labs, and another Trulieve location opens in Inverness. Now, however, one thing I did notice is that the qualified patient count slowed down quite a bit this last month, up to 636,105. It was actually only an increase of 1,008 from the previous week. So that's notable. I'm not exactly sure why that was, but obviously I'm going to be looking at next week to see whether that trend continues. It's possible there's an explanation as to why, citizens of Florida didn't go seek new medical alternatives, but that's just one thing noticing. However, on top of that, it's worth noticing that sales did not slow or anything. So the fact that we saw less patients end up qualifying, and the fact that we're seeing sales strong, just means that existing patients are happy with the medical cannabis that they're getting, and therefore spending, the same amount of dollars that they've been previously spending. Now keep in mind, I'm just noticing that these sales and not sales in dollar figures, but sales in the amount of milligrams THC sold, milligrams of CBD sold, and ounces of smokable flower sold. These are actually calculated for the prior week. And I apologize that I've not even really picked up on that doing this video. But so these are for the sales for the prior week. This is for the opening of dispensaries for the week. I guess this is the patient count from this recent week that we've just gone through. But anyways, again, just to highlight, for MSOs in the state of Florida, sales are strong as they're selling large amount of milligrams of THC, large amount of milligrams of CBD, and large amounts of ounces of smokable flower. Now, I typically just use Tilray as my proxy here because Tilray is the one large MSO that I have in Florida that I really want to make sure that they keep their market share. But just last thing to note is that sales are still strong despite that we saw a bit of a slowing in patient increases there. So on to this one from Verano and MSOs, as Verano enters Connecticut cannabis market with vertical integration ahead of adult use transition. So interesting, as they announced, it has entered into multiple agreements to acquire all of the issued and outstanding equity interests of Caring Nature LLC and Connecticut Pharmaceutical Solutions, along with the closing of its acquisition of Willowbrook Wellness. So Caring Nature owns an active dispensary in Waterbury, Connecticut. Connecticut Pharmaceutical Solutions owns an operating cultivation and production facility in Rocky Hill, Connecticut. And Willowbrook Wellness holds an active dispensary in Meriden, Connecticut. So collectively, these acquisitions expand Verano's presence on the East Coast with the addition of vertically integrated operations in the attractive Connecticut market, which is again new, has not been launched yet, but would provide some obviously potential for growth in the future. So just going to go through the transaction highlights. Now apparently these have already been closed and there's no dollar figures pointed to them, so I'm not going to go through them, but this new Connecticut Pharmaceutical Solutions, the transaction to acquire 100% of equity interest in Connecticut Pharmaceutical Solutions includes an active 216,000 square foot state-of-the-art cultivation and production facility in Rocky Hill, Connecticut. Aggregate proceeds for the transaction include $113.2 million. So they're paying about $113 million US dollars in subordinate voting shares. So this is going to dilute shareholders, unfortunately, but that's how they want to pay for this. Upon the consummation of transaction, another $18.5 million in subordinate voting shares. So that makes it roughly about 130 million total upon the first adult use sales of medical cannabis in Connecticut, and additional subordinate voting shares based on achieving 2021 EBITDA performance milestones. So the agreement was signed on November 10th. And obviously still requires the subject to customary conditions, contingencies, and approvals before closing. But this is Verano making a move to get into the Connecticut market before that opens up. So of course you want to get in early while it's still cheap before you can prepare and capitalize on those sales, while TerrAscend shareholders overwhelmingly approve acquisition of Gage. So TerrAscend announces that it has received the requisite minority shareholder approval at a special meeting held November 11th for the proposed acquisition of all the issued and outstanding securities of Gage Growth Corp., a leading high-quality premium cannabis brand and operator. And the resolution put forth to shareholders at the meeting in respect to the transaction was approved by approximately 99.78% of the votes. So yeah, most of them were happy with this deal. So good job, TerrAscend, for closing this transaction. And then Air Wellness, or I'm not sure if closing it, but getting the votes you needed to close it. And then Air Wellness adds to Pennsylvania footprint, opens a new dispensary in Montgomery. So the Montgomery dispensary is located at the 5 Points Junction, popular shopping area in Montgomeryville, Pennsylvania. The 8,400 square foot store continues the rapid expansion of the Air organization's presence in Pennsylvania's burgeoning medical market. Montgomeryville is the northern suburb of Philadelphia, located in Montgomery County, the third most populous county in Pennsylvania with over 850,000 residents, so a decent population, according to the 2020 census. And so why are MSOs scrambling to get into PA early? Because it has a robust and growing medical cannabis market with over 633,000 patients, 132 licensed dispensaries, and 29 operational licensed cultivators and processors. And their annual industry-wide statewide cannabis sales in Pennsylvania are expected to surpass $1 billion by 2024, according to BDSA, or as quickly as they can legalize for adult use, because that'll help them get that sales over that mark. And it just helps when your store has 12 points of sale stations and 46 parking spaces, so you can help properly supply that demand. On to some other news, as Virginia GOP lawmakers open to allowing cannabis sales after taking control of the House. And this is not bad, but it's just more unexpected, because people thought, well, if Virginia does flip again in this recent election, then it's possible that Virginia's progress in cannabis legalization can be delayed. But it turns out best possible thing could have happened, because this might actually accelerate the start date. As newly empowered Republicans in Virginia say plans to allow retail sales of recreational cannabis won't necessarily be doomed under the control of the House of Delegates and Executive Mansion. And some say they're open to speeding up the timeline for allowing retail sales, which is currently delayed until 2024, delayed by Democrats. And it's Republicans that are saying that they're going to increase. So yeah, seems like Republicans are really trying to steal this from the Democrats. You almost kind of have to, says Glenn Davis, calling the current state of the law in which possession and cultivation of small amounts is legal, but buying and selling the product is not, has created a quagmire that the party can't ignore. I guess we're kind of half pregnant. Yeah, well, that's a good way to look at it. And the Dems should have looked at it honestly, throughout this entire year and taken action. So Davis's comments echoed House Leader Todd Gilbert's statements in the subject last week when he told reporters that GOP members in the House would have no choice but to work with Democrats in the Senate to address the half-finished legislation, which have likened to a live grenade rolling around. Adding, we need to fix it or all we have is a black market, which is so true. And guess who created this black market environment? The Dems, who signed the legalization bill earlier this year. However, we're going to delay retail sales until 2024. Like, why? So it almost seems like the Dems were the bad guys for cannabis, and thank goodness they've lost so that the GOP lawmakers can come in, and as the entire GOP in the U.S. as a whole has realized, they can steal this issue of cannabis from under the Democrats. This is actually probably the best case scenario we could have hoped for in Virginia. So lastly, out of international news, top Mexican senator blames the U.S. for cannabis criminalization ahead of legalization vote expected next month. So get that, folks. And while this is more of the same, it is positive that we actually have a timeline to look forward to, as the legalization vote is expected next month out of Mexico, as Mexico's Senate president says that the influence of the U.S. is to blame for failed cannabis criminalization laws in our country. And while yes, we can blame the U.S. for being bullies in the past and in the 1960s forcing every country to comply with their prohibitionist views, but last time I checked, it's 2021's, and it's up for you, Mexico Senate, to rewrite the new laws, the solution to those past problems. So thankfully, lawmakers are now working to reverse those policies. However, with the legislature expected to vote on a bill to regulate cannabis within weeks, another top senator said. So we have next month within weeks, but hopefully the overwhelming majority will be a yes, and this will pass, which will be positive sentiment for the cannabis plant. But she pointed out to a prohibitionist culture that developed in the 1960s, saying it came from the U.S. according to a translation. Yes, this is true, but how about stop complaining and pointing fingers of who made the problem in the past and be the solution in the present. So thank you, Mexico. Hopefully we'll see some news out of that, while Germany's next coalition nears deal on legalizing cannabis. Reported by Bloomberg, Germany's likely next ruling coalition is closing in on a deal to legalize cannabis for recreational use. The strongest signal yet that long-awaited growth in Europe's cannabis market is gaining traction, as negotiators for the Social Democrats, Greens, and pro-business Free Democrats are hammering out the details, including conditions under which the sales and use of recreational cannabis would be allowed and regulated, according to people familiar with the talks who asked not to be identified because the discussions are private. So at least progress is being made in Germany, although that's continuously what we keep hearing. At least we're hearing that these talks are in progress now. They're part of a wider negotiations on forming a new government, with the three parties targeting early December for a new administration to take office under Social Democratic Olaf Scholz. So good as well, we get a bit of a timeline for early December. No final decision on cannabis has been made, and the outcome could still change. The people have said. Spokespeople for the Greens and SPD declined to comment on any aspect of the coalition talks. A spokesperson for the FDP didn't immediately respond to a request for comment on the cannabis plan. So look out out for something in early February for some news there. So just wanted to highlight that. So it would be very positive if both Mexico and Germany get this done in December with some sort of a progress. And lastly, we have the most recent town from Tuesday, which is now available on SoundCloud here, so you can grab the link if you want to listen, plus everything I featured, all the links will be below on this episode. So basically this conversation features Todd Harrison, Jeff Schultz, and Brady Cobb, but it's the latest up-to-date information on where we sit and how the new developments of this new Republican bill is putting a lot more pressure on Schumer to keep safe in the NDAA so they can get a win now, so the people can actually like the Dems a little bit, and then him and his team can work with the Republicans on getting a fuller scale bill with social equity, descheduling and expungement of records passed by 420, because Schumer did say this past year he wants to see some sort of a bill passed by 420 next year. And ultimately, Nancy Mace's bill is way better than his. So if he actually wants to make this cannabis victory and give the Dems a chance of being reelected next year, he best end up keeping safe in the NDAA and working alongside them and getting something done together that benefits all Americans. And when you consider the fact that the NDAA has to be passed by December 10th before Congress goes on recess, things are about to get very interesting in the world of cannabis. And that is it for today's episode, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of the stories mentioned today? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to address them. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video or you learned something, please just leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I'll be back on Wednesday for a midweek update with Trulieve's and Verano's earnings. Have a great weekend, everybody.